Hello, everybody. It's me, your Lich Junior. We're back with the Mite No podcast. Today, I have a terrible ball in my throat, and it makes me cough really, really painfully. So if that happens, I'm apologizing ahead of time. Also, I have a co-host, and their name is Rudy, and they're in my room. Say hi, Rudy.
I am hiding away. Hello.
You're hiding. You're just kind of standing in front of my bed.
No,
That's not
I'm
really a
not
good hiding
hiding.
spot.
I'm joking. I wanted to spice things up instead of just saying hello.
Oh, hi, joking. I'm Junior.
But yeah, hi.
All right. Today, we are covering episodes 36 through 40. We are officially well past the halfway point for the East Blue Saga. We are moving right along. Let's dive right into an episode that I think you found more sad than I did, based on our conversations last week. And that
Oh yeah,
is,
for sure.
and that
For
is,
sure.
let me take a look here. What did I write down? I watched this episode like 2 weeks ago now, so my notes are like super hazy to me. But basically,
I watched the episode literally yesterday.
very good. I basically wrote Belmare ain't fucking around. As she quickly realizes there's something wrong when someone approaches her house, and tries to invite them in. Um, and Arlong and his crew are being sort of, scummy. And Belmare just jumps out of the door, uh, ex-Marine style. Oh, that's this word. It says Marine ain't fucking around. She puts her gun right into Arlong's mouth and pins him to the ground. And I just wrote down she should have shot. There's
Because
no
she
reason
just
for her to talk. She should have just pulled the fucking trigger and killed him. Um, and I absolutely think Arlong was weak enough at this point in the timeline to die to a bullet directly into his head from within his mouth. Like, for sure. I was so, like, wholly convinced that she would totally have been able to kill him there, but she was stupid. And that is, oh, that is a trend that's going to continue for the rest of this episode. Um, and Arlong takes exception to having a gun being put in his mouth, and she loses her fucking arm, basically.
nom 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 yummy gun. My
Yeah, no,
favorite thing to
he bites the gun right in half, which also was sort of obvious because, we saw him eat a cannonball earlier. What the fuck's this gun going to do to him? Um, so yeah, Belmare should have definitely shot her marine training. Like, she should have just pulled the trigger, sight on scene. I thought that was really dumb. So at this point, we find out that the fishman, Karubi, or whatever his name is, the stupid looking karate one. Not that all fishmen look stupid, it's just he in particular looks stupid. Um, they found, like, the town register. And once they learned her name, that it was Belmare, they confirmed that she lives alone and has no kids, because Belmare never legally adopted any of the kids, so they're not registered under her name on the town register. Um, which is, funny to me in a way. I'm just like, hey, there you go. You found a legal loophole. When you went AWOL and stole these kids, you managed to fuck up just well enough. You fell forward. This is great. So we cut to Nami, who's just a kid. And this is a fucking super shitty situation for a kid to be in. And Nami's reactions here are like wholly justified, even though they're also pretty dumb. And I just wrote down that Belmare seems to be really suicidal. Um, and basically, Belmare, the Arlong Pirates demand she pay the 100,000 berry for herself. Gen's like, perfect. They don't know about the kids. We can get them off the island. We can get them away. It'll work out perfect. You can just pay for yourself. They don't know about the kids, and we can make this work. But Belmare, no, those are her daughters, and she can't even She can't even pretend to abandon them because she's dumb. So she tells Arlong that that money was for her two daughters and not her. And she can't pay for herself, only them. Which again, seems like kind of a dumb move to get yourself killed just to let your daughters know you love them. I'm pretty sure Nami and Nojiko would have been a lot more happy if you were alive. I don't know. It's just they start playing the sad music. Arlon whips out his gun and shoot her. And in my notes, I could just write. I just wrote, "This is very dumb. Miss me with that sad music, BS." Um, Nami and Nojiko run over to their now dying mother. Uh, and Gen is about to get fucking ruined. We actually get to see a dying Belmere lift her broken arm to hug Nami. That was pretty metal. I was like, wow, we really just saw them break that arm to the point where it was limp nothing. And there it is. She's just moving it.
Oh yeah, it literally looks like it's just been flattened.
Yeah. And she just lifts it up to give Nami a hug. The villagers come to help, but get beaten, of course, because, I mean, they all suck as people, except maybe Gen. But even Gen's not, like, a soldier. He's, like, barely even, like, a Coast Guard representative. Like, he sucks, too, in his own way. This is where we see Gen get cut the fuck up, so why he's covered in scars later in the story. And then in my notes, it's just like, well, I just wrote down, oh, that was a life wasted. Because it was. I'm sorry. Listen, I understand what Oda's going for here, but it was stupid. The little logical part of my unfeeling undead brain just cannot think this is sad because a grown woman decided to kill herself and leave her two daughters orphaned. And it's just like, I don't understand why these decisions were made by people who should have been smarter. The fishermen find Nami's her map, sorry, and discover that she's very good at maps, so they go to take Nami away. And everyone, is like, no, you said you wouldn't hurt them. You said you wouldn't take them, or, like, hurt them. And he's like, oh, I'm not gonna hurt her. I'm just gonna take her. And I'm like, that doesn't sound legitimate, but alright. Um, and this is sort of, like, building up the PTSD for current Nami and Nojiko. And this is really where we get that moment of Nami's decision for no one else in the town to die. And it does do a really good thing of building in this almost like savior complex Nami has, where she has to take all this burden on herself. She has to save everyone. At this point, we cut to the coastline where we find out that the fishmen sunk all the boats. And there's a little throwaway line like, oh, our plan to get the girls off the island wouldn't have worked. I'm like, bullshit. You would have found another way easily. There aren't enough fishermen to cover every inch of this coast all the time. 100% those girls would have been able to get out of here. Or stay hidden during collection time, whatever. It's just, So there is a moment here where the town decide to fight. The town all gets together and like, fuck this. We would rather die. And then Nami shows up. And she says she's going to work for the pirates. She's going to make maps for them. And look, they gave her a cool tattoo. And Nojiko is angry about this. Understandably, because she is a child. And they get into a big
Oh
old fight.
no. Oh no. Oh no.
Yeah. But
Um, um, issue.
what's
My
wrong?
PC is trying to update Windows, and the most I have is an hour.
Alright, well, we'll
So,
speedrun this.
okay.
Alright, here we go. You ready to listen to Junior? You want to set us back to 1% speed if you had it higher, because I'm going to go faster. So, Nami and Nojiko get into a bit of a fight. It comes to the realization the government isn't going to help anybody. And Nami explains the deal to Nojiko. And we learn a little bit more about how the tribute money and everything was set up. And basically, Nami made a deal to buy the village. And while she's working on that, as long as the village plays nice by the rules, Arlong promised not to kill anyone. Nojiko thinks this is a terribly stupid idea, but understands that it's Nami's choice and she's going to go through with it. But Nami doesn't know that Gen heard this. And so they become aware, and the whole town becomes aware of Nami's plan, and they decide that they're going to fight by standing quietly behind Nami and trying to shoulder the burden of living through this horrible existence for her. I just wrote down in my notes, don't don't fucking tattoo kids, by the way. Uh that tattoo would not look the way it does now because she got it when she was 10, and Nami has grown a lot since then. Her skin has changed in size considerably. You don't tattoo kids. Like, again, this is probably just something that Oda doesn't have any understanding of, but you don't tattoo kids. Um Even with parental consent, it's not even a thing you can even get until you're like 16. This little flashback does confirm that Nami is in fact 18, which I'm not sure we were fully aware of.
I'm pretty sure they said during uh during the time when Nami was wearing my favorite outfit of hers, the striped T-shirt when she was with Luffy and stuff during the Buggy stuff. I do think they did mention she was 18 there.
Maybe. That's right. Because she's 1 year older than Luffy, and Luffy is 17 at this point in the story. Um, so this is what Najiko is saying, and Nojiko also seems to naively believe that Arlong is going to follow through with his deal. Um, Johnny and Yosaku eavesdrop on this conversation of Nojiko telling the boys about this, um, and they're about to do something. They're about to head towards Arlong Park on their own, and we'll find out more about that later. It's also at this point where we expressly see where the treasure is hidden in the orchard, and we see Luffy walking. Because Luffy went on a walk last episode, and that's great. And we see him thinking about the pinwheel because he sees Gen, and he just fucking loves that pinwheel, which is foreshadowing for
Yeah.
later. And
Sorry, I'm gonna have to correct you every time now. It's
it,
just a thing. Whenever you say Gin, I'm like, no, it's Gin.
they're the same word.
I know you consider the same word, but it's like my mind just automatically says autocorrect.
I have it written down right. You're maybe just mishearing my pronunciation of it. Um,
Maybe.
it's at this point that Captain Ratface McFuck, who we know is corrupt,
Oh
shows
yeah,
up.
Ratty boy.
Who shows up with his little rat laugh, his little chit chit chit, and starts asking for Nami. And again, thinking that there's nothing wrong with this, is like, all right, sure. I mean, I don't know why he's such a fucking naive idiot here, but all right. And that's the end of that episode. Let's dive right into next episode 37, which is what I titled "Okay, I'll Cry," because this is the first episode in One Piece that really fucks me up. Um, Sometimes the Usopp stuff with his mother at the end of Usopp's arc, when Mary is talking about Usopp's mother dying, and we get those scenes. Sometimes that can make me cry. But this is the first scene in One Piece, this episode, where I just break down and I need a minute. This is the first episode. So we open on more Arlong flashbacks, talking about the deal with Nami. And again, this is all leading into Arlong's corruption of the Navy, shows that he's going to steal her money. It's at this point where Nami learns that Gen has always known about the deal. While she's trying to protect the orchard from the Marines, um, and because the Marines let slip that they know exactly how much money is there, but there's no possible way they would know that unless Arlong told them. And that's like that moment where she realized that Arlong set this all up. And honestly, Nezumi, the rat guy, is like being like not even coy. He's just like, yeah, totally. But like, there's no proof, and you're a thief, so you don't matter. um, it's at this point that Nojiko shows up. And I just wrote down the bastard shoots Nojiko because she ends up taking one in the arm. Because again, Nami is technically a criminal, even though she's stealing from pirates. Because of Arlong's influence, um, these Marines are here to steal things from her under the guise that she is a criminal. Also, technically, I guess she's a member of the Arlong Pirates. So, I mean, technically she's a pirate. Nojiko ends up getting shot. Luffy got a good idea thinking about the pinwheel as we cut back to him thinking more about.
Ah, yes. Oh my god, yes, the gum
Yeah, we'll
pinwheel.
see that. We'll see that next episode. Um, Nami shows up. She gets very mad at Luffy, who's still there, and then runs to confront Arlong. We cut to her confronting Arlong, but like Nezume's acting, there's no proof. There's just the fact that he did it, but no physical evidence to undoubtedly show that he did it. Um, and he tells her that she better start saving again. And it's just like fucked. The other Arlong leaders are like, hey, don't you think we maybe like push this too far? But again, Arlong is extremely confident she can't run away because, of course not, right? Nami can't let these people die. Her trauma won't let her. Um, her coping mechanisms, her entire being is wrapped up in keeping these people alive and has been for 8 years. Um, so anything that will keep them alive, she's going to try. Um, so the boys make their way to Luffy, who's still in the village. Or start heading their way there. They're going to meet Luffy at the village now that they've heard the full story. Again, and the villagers prep to attack. Uh, Now that they realize that Arlong has gone back on his deal, Nami shows up. She like tries to stop them in like the weakest acting Nami has because she's fucked up at this moment and she's not able to bring her A game. And I love him so much. He goes up and just gives her a hug and it's just like we would rather fucking die. um he's so
It's
angry that I literally wrote Gensan is pissed they would betray his daughter's trust. Um
it's
and
like they're all going off to fight, right? And then like when they're gone, Nami's just hating on Arlong so much he's trying to carve the tattoo out of her own skin, like bro.
we'll get to that scene and how much it skeeves me out because there's another good moment right here. Nami again tries to get them to stop and like she like holds the knife up like I'll fucking cut you. I'll stop you. Like I hit that kid. Like I'm not gonna let you run to your deaths. I've worked too hard to keep you all alive. And Genzan just like walks up and grabs the dagger out of her hand, like by the blade. And Nami just has this one moment, this one really weak moment, which is beautiful. And she just says, "You'll die," you know. And I wrote down the Japanese because I'm a nerd. And Gensan is just like, "Shiteru," like we know we're going. Which is metal as fuck. So Nami experiences like an extreme PTSD flashback. She falls down on her knees. There's a really uncomfortable scene where like it's really animated in a way where you can see that she's like clawing this flesh on her arm with her fingers, and the way it pulls on the skin is like really has always been super like uncomfortable for me. And then she picks up her dagger and starts stabbing herself in the shoulder at the tattoo while she cries. And there's just this overimposed laughter. And she's just yelling Arlong's name. And we hear this tyrant who's been this abuser for the past 8 years of her life, the person who killed her mother, just laughing maniacally over this image of her stabbing herself. Um, and eventually Luffy stops her. And there's another beautiful moment where she gets mad at him, and says, you don't even know what's going on here, right?" And
Hmm.
he's like, "I don't, I don't care." She throws dirt at him, like kicking it back like a child, because again, Nami is going through some stuff here. And I'm not crying yet. I'm not crying yet. Nami just sits there after this moment, and she's crying, and Luffy is just standing behind her, and she's not looking at him. And there's a moment where she turns around a little bit, and it's like an over-the-shoulder shot, and she just says, "Luffy, help me." And I'm starting to tear up. Sorry. He puts his hat on her head and walks past her. I don't cry yet. I don't cry yet. It starts building during all of this, but I don't start sobbing yet. My eyes are getting watery right now just thinking about it though. Um and there's just this super quick flashback to Luffy talking about how that hat is his treasure, how he would die for it. Without hesitation, he would do anything for this hat. And he just put it on her head and walked away. Which is all kinds of symbolic. Like, I don't really get Nami Luffy shippers, but like after this scene, I'm like, you know what? I kinda get it. Um and again, I'm not crying yet. And then Luffy throws his fucking hands into the air and just screams, "Of course I will." And then I start to cry like a bitch. Uh and I'm just inconsolably sobbing, and uh and Nami realizes that at this point, like, oh, these men had my back 100% of the way, no matter what. There was no point where Luffy would have ever left me here. And it hits her. It hits her like a ton of fucking bricks. And Luffy is furious with Arlong. And all this hate and rage that's sort of been bottling up inside of him is just grown. Um, and then the shot cuts out further, and we realize that the other three boys are there as well, because we haven't seen them in scene at this point yet. We don't know that they're in the village seeing this, and all three of them stand up, even Usopp, and they just like with grim determination are like, "All right, Armageddon style walking montage. We're gonna go fillet some fish, because they made our Nami cry, and we're not okay with that." And it's so good.
Mm.
It's so good. Um, usually the usually during the really shitty walking animation, I stop crying, because it's really shitty. And that's enough to pull me out of the emotional state I'm in. But before that, we cut over to Arlong Park where the villagers are arriving with the ramshackle weapons, and they're stopped by Yosaku and Johnny, who've been beat the fuck up because they were so incensed upon learning the truth about Nami, they rushed to charge Arlong Park on their own. Which is just funny for me to say out loud. And got their asses kicked, but for some reason weren't killed. Um, so they know that the Straw Hat Pirates are going to come and they're going to beat Arlong, and they take it upon themselves to act as guard dogs to not let Nami's precious villagers die. Um, so as they move in, there's this badass moment. We get these moments very rarely from Luffy, so rarely, so rarely. But we actually hear Luffy like tell the people to move aside, which again isn't something we normally hear Luffy say. He like barks an order at these civilians. Um, at which point Luffy punches down the gate to Arlong Park, which makes Arlong a little mad. um, and he looks over because again they're just sort of standing there, and then this massive stone gate gets blasted across the fucking room, and they just look over and there's this fucking little twink in a pair of shorts and a red shirt. Um, and he just says, "Which one of you is Arlong?" And then cut to the end of the episode. Ah,
I will say it was cool until it was like that whole thing with the whole gate crashing down and stuff, that was cool. But when it made that dumb pan up to Luffy saying which one of you is Arlong, that just was like, bro, you just killed the epic mood with the camera.
I think the worst part is at the start of the next episode, where Luffy. we'll talk about it in a second. Um, so I have to ask, did you cry in this episode, or was it just me?
I think I only really cried at the the episode prior.
Really? That's so interesting to me that you would find the Belmare situation sadder than how uplifting this situation. I cry for
I think
happy moments.
I think I probably cried a little bit during this episode, but it was probably
Oh,
the
this
last
one.
episode I
Hey,
cried
listen.
throughout
This
this.
is a spoiler for the rest of the series with me. Whenever there is this exact moment happening, but with a different Straw Hat member, I cry like a bitch. And it happens a few times. Um, there's one at around episode 337 that happens. That is, if it's if I need to make myself cry, like if someone's, hey, I'm gonna give you 1 minute, cry for me, I'll give you $100. I would start running through these scenes in One Piece, and I'll be crying in 30 seconds. Um, but moments,
Meanwhile, that's me just trying. Meanwhile, with me, it's different. I just try and recollect that the one anime movie that I watched.
yeah. For me, it's always One Piece. It'll get me crying super fast, and we'll get to some moments later that I will almost guarantee will make you cry. This moment hits me because I just can't handle. I have a really strong connection with characters who put up a lot of emotional barriers and walls, and are mentally pushed to their end point, and when they're broken and crying asking for help, and there's something so pure and good about Luffy just unquestioning loyalty to the people he loves, that just it hits me right in the heart. um but if I keep talking about it, I'm gonna start crying again, so let's go to the next episode. Okay. All right,
Yeah, really
episode
weird lips, man.
yeah, episode 38, baby. Time for Luffy's warm up. Um, I think, I think this is an okay episode, but it has some weird choices. We see some more of crying Nami. It replays Luffy tearing down the wall. And I just wrote in my notes, "Hey, yo, where the bitch at?" Uh, because I write my notes very quickly while the episode is playing. Sometimes I just ad lib. Which is Luffy asking, where's Arlong? And Arlong is of course like, well, that would be me. So Luffy starts walking towards him. Two fishermen get in Luffy's way, and he just grabs them and slaps their heads together, and they pass out. Um, with like a really stupid sound effect. And then Luffy stops like right next to Arlong, and Arlong's not moving because again, to him this person isn't a threat because he's a human, he's a kid. Arlong doesn't Arlong isn't strong enough to notice how strong Luffy is, which should tell you how the rest of the arc is going to go eventually. Um but like later on in One Piece, characters are usually pretty good at seeing when someone else is as strong as they are. Um and Luffy's pretty good at it too. Luffy has usually a really good idea if he's about to lose a fight or not. Um, or if he's losing a fight because he's doing something wrong, but he's strong enough to do it. Luffy can tell the difference. But Luffy's just balls to the wall confident here. So he does the dumbest punch ever, where he like uses his one hand to pull the other hand back, but he doesn't even gum it. Like he doesn't stretch. He's not like pulling that arm. He just does like a Superman punch, like from wrestling, where like the wrestler gets up and cocks his arm like a shotgun, and that somehow makes the punch harder. Like it's really stupid. It was really a WWE moment where he like grabs his arm and pulls it back and then punches, and I'm like, what the fuck did that do? Why did you animate it this way? This is so stupid. Um, which is great. So Arlong goes fucking flying into a wall. Everyone's like, oh shit, a normal person couldn't do that. Um, and Luffy like huffs out smoke like he's a fucking dragon. And it's just like, don't make our navigator cry, you bastard. Um, and then we see Hachi being an idiot. That is a lot of my notes for the next 2 pages. So get used to me saying, and then Hachi was an idiot. Because it's like,
Oh, he is an idiot. I mean, he just like he basically was so trusting of Zoro in the first part that he literally brought him over to where Arlong used to be. Then he got punished for it. And
He
then he realizes it here, and he's so gullible, like he's stupid.
Hachi is in many ways the comic relief member of the Fishman Pirates crew, sort of like how Usopp is kind of the comic relief of the Straw Hats, but honestly, all of the Straw Hats have their comedy moments. But a big thing with Hachi is that he's kind of innocent in that way. And this will come up later because we actually meet Hachi again much later in the story. Um, and that's another thing that makes me cry, and we'll talk about it later. However, Usopp is there. So, Kuropi is like, hey, it's that long-nosed thing. That means Nami did betray us. She didn't actually kill him. And I'm like, yeah, you didn't find a body. Why did... Y'all are stupid. Um, and she realized that, that Usopp is still alive, Nami betrayed them, and whatnot. But again, Arlong's never gonna let them kill Nami. He might find a different way to punish her and abuse her, but he has a use for her that will greatly outweigh her betraying them ever so slightly. We get a little more windmill foreshadowing with Yen, and then Hachi fucking blows revelry. Revelry? How do you say that word? I've always had a hard time with this word.
What word?
Revelry, I think is the name of the song. The one that Hachi blows with his mouth like a trumpet that they use in like the World War II remembrance ceremonies. There's a song called Revelry.
Can't
Um,
remember.
it's like I can't even pantomime it. So Momu shows up. But Momu was already beat the shit up by Sanji and Luffy, and shows up all beaten up with a big welt on his head. And he sees Sanji and Luffy, and they're just like, "Oh, this fish again?" And he's like, "I'm gonna leave." And then this is good build up for Arlong because Arlong's just like, "Hey, fine, you can leave, but then I'm gonna come after you." And we just see that moment where like Momo would rather face Luffy and Sanji again, knowing it will lose 100%, than face Arlong where it knows it will die 100%. Because Luffy and Sanji are very different to Arlong. They just beat Momu up and used it as a mount. Arlong will kill it. And it knows that. And again, there's a lot of subtle things that happen over the Arlong arc that really build Arlong's strength up for the final fight. And this is one of them. And we have this beautiful moment where Luffy's just like Momu's coming at them, and all the Fisherman Pirate are charging them, and it's all animated terribly. And Luffy's like, "This is a waste of time," and then he does something dumb, where he slams his 2 feet into the concrete floor of Arlong Park, begins spinning his body around like a cork, and shoots out his hand to grab Momu. Zoro, who still hasn't figured out what's going on, knows enough to know that this is stupidly dangerous, and orders everyone else to get down. But he still doesn't know what exactly is happening. And then we get
Like he literally pulled the Joseph Joestar Nigeru and Daio card.
yeah, it's great. This is a good moment. Um, and we get a one-off technique that is never seen again. I don't believe. Uh, I don't think so. It might be once. Um, the Gama Gama no pinwheel, baby, where Luffy uses Momu as a fucking helicopter blade and just levels a part of Arlong Park before tossing Momu out to sea. However, this is a very funny moment where, like Usopp and Sanji and Zoro all run up and they're like hitting him and poking him, like, "Hey, you idiot! That was dangerous. You could have hurt us. Were you trying to kill everyone?" Excuse me. And we see the fishermen lieutenants being upset that all their goons got beaten so easily.
I woke up with a bit of neck pain today.
Yeah, but it's really good because at this moment, if you're paying attention to Luffy, you see the moment where he notices he's stuck in the ground and can't move his feet, but he doesn't ever get a chance to say it. Um, But there is a moment where Luffy's eyes are animated in such a way that he notices something and then looks down and you see him move a little bit. And we as the audience don't know that Luffy is stuck yet. But if you're watching him, there's like a few individual scenes before he even starts talking about the problem that something is wrong. Um, so there's a moment where Hachi um, decides to drop a building on Luffy. First, he shoots ink at them because again he's an octopus. Everyone dodges out of the way except Luffy, and Zora's like, "Why didn't you dodge?" To quote Dragon Ball Z Abridged, and Luffy's like, I can't. I'm stuck." And they're all like, "What? But you did that yourself." And he's like, "I know, but I can't get my legs out." So Hachi um comes to drop this like huge section of Arlong Park on Luffy, which by the way wouldn't even hurt Luffy. But Sanji stops it anyways. He dashes up next to Luffy and puts a foot straight up in the air and kicks this huge section of wall clean in half. And it's like a really cool Sanji moment, so I'm fine with it. um, it's at this point that Kurobe begins like insulting Nami in front of Sanji. Um, and we get the whole like Sanji doing a little bit of chivalry bit, and the Fishman mocking his chivalrous nature, and we very clearly see the one-on-one fights happen. Basically, Zoro versus Hachi, Sanji versus Kurobe, and Usopp versus Chu. And how the Usopp Chu fight starts is why the other people are warming up into their fights. Usopp is like dragging Luffy back and is trying to like through the sheer force of elasticity rip his feet out of the cement. But Luffy doesn't look like he cares. He definitely doesn't look like he's trying. Which pisses Usopp off. And there's a moment where someone like compliments Usopp or something, and he like, "Hey, that's a good idea, thank you," and he just lets go of Luffy. So Luffy whips back and like hits Chu, the fisherman commander with the long face, which Chu takes as an attack from Usopp. uh, and so he starts chasing him, and Usopp just starts running the fuck away. Um, which is great. And it's at this moment that Chu notices that the villagers are there on the other side of the gate. He's like, "Oh, this is a rebellion. All right, when we're done here, we're gonna have to kill all of you." And there's a moment where like it's like, "Oh right, they hadn't realized the villagers were there until just now. Shit, Usopp, why did you lead him here?" But then Usopp, realizing he fucked up, shoots Chu in the head, which is just I love whenever Usopp like just has his brave moments. They don't bring me to tears, but sometimes they get me close. This one doesn't. So Chu, again, distracted by Usopp having the audacity to hit him, starts chasing again. And there's another moment where again, Arlong is like getting upset and getting ready to fight. And Kurobe and Hachi talk him down. Because again, if Arlong goes on a fight, the whole part of the island will be destroyed. And they don't want him to ruin their base, so please leave it to us. Again, it's this thing where if Arlong ever gets into a serious fight, he will level the area he is in. And they've been building this up this entire arc of just Arlong is crazy dangerous. They do a really good job. Oda did an amazing job, claps to Oda. He did an amazing job of building Arlong up to being the thing Luffy needs to take down this arc. So there's a moment where Arlong decides on a game, and he walks up to Luffy and shoves his hand into the concrete and lifts Luffy up into the air like it's nothing. With this massive chunk of concrete Luffy is stuck in, and he goes, you know, devil fruit users can't swim, but anyone would drown in your situation. And everyone else just collectively goes, ah shit, he's gonna throw Luffy into the ocean. Um, Luffy goes to punch Arlong right in the mouth. Who punches someone in their open mouth? And Arlong like bites his arm, which definitely would have just taken the arm off. And it looks like he was taking the arm off. This is animated in a very weird and uncomfortable way. Luffy, in order to get his arm out of the shark's mouth, bites Arlong's arm, which we'll see Luffy do again later. He bites Arlong a few times, which is very funny to me. But Arlong tosses Luffy into the ocean, and we get the Arlong game, where the Straw Hat crew have to somehow beat the Arlong Pirates with enough time to save Luffy before he drowns. And that's the end of the episode. Anything else you wanted to add in there?
No, not really.
Yeah, it was a good episode. There were some weird animation choices here and there. The next two episodes are probably going to go lightning fast because honestly, in my notes, they only got about half a page each because they were mostly fighting. And unless
how many pages did the last one get?
that one
The
was
last
one whole page.
Oh,
Most episodes are either half a page or one whole page. I haven't had an episode go longer than a full page in my notes yet, even with my messy bullet point writing, which does eat up a lot more space than if I was like writing out paragraphs. But I because I'm watching and writing at the same time, I'm just doing like fast bullet points for the most part. Unless there's something happening that I really want to focus on, and then I'll pause the episode and write a full coherent sentence. To take down how Junior has always taken notes all of his life. Excuse me. Episode 39. Let's dive right into the fight, because again, the best part of One Piece discussion is where something really interesting happens. And sadly, while some of the fights are super cool and really cool animated or involve cool things, there's not a lot to talk about other than this one particular scene was really cool. Next scene, go. Because there's just not as much story happening typically. Some fights later will change that, but for the next two episodes, they're pretty cut and dry, just fights happen. The whole first part of the episode is sort of a flashback to the start of the fight, and then we see Zoro versus Hachi. There's a moment where we see Nojiko notice Luffy gets thrown into the water, and she realizes before anyone else that they have to do something about it. Zoro is having a hard time fighting against Hachi's shtick, because Hachi is just super exhausting to talk to and interact with. And Zoro is such a straight man of the One Piece crew that being paired up with the comedic guy is like really draining him emotionally. Also, Zoro was almost cut in half like a day and a half ago. So Zoro's wounds are getting real bad. Gen decides to be a good boy. He's going to go try and help Luffy break him free. The rest of the villagers want to help, but that would cause too much of a commotion. They might notice. He elects to go on his own. Then Nojiko shows up with the hammer they're going to use, which is weird because, excuse me, Nojiko goes and gets the hammer, but they never address that she was the one who went and got the hammer. But I thought they did. I don't know. Maybe I just misremembered that. So they sneak off to where Luffy was thrown underwater, and they're gonna try and save Luffy by breaking the rock he's attached to. Hachi keeps going on about the swordsman and how there's no way that a swordsman like Zoro could beat him because he's a fisherman swordsman and he can use 6 swords. There's no way a human swordsman could be as good as him because he has 6 arms. And he does so much shtick where he's like, I'll catch your swords, and then Zoro just cuts him in the head. Because he just claps his hands like he's gonna catch Zoro's sword, like a Japanese kid does. And that doesn't work. And there's a moment where Zoro is like, Hachi jumps up on a pillar, and Zoro is like going down on one knee. Hachi hasn't done shit to Zoro yet, but Zoro's wound and fever are getting worse. And there's a fucking line in Zoro's inner monologue where he's like, I think my fever's getting worse. I thought it'd get better when I got up and moved around. And I'm like, Zoro, that is the opposite of what happens when you have a fever. You thought this rigorous exercise would help? Are you an idiot? And there's a moment where I wrote down this in my notes because I did find it very funny, where it cuts back to Yosuke and Johnny reacting to Zoro's fight, which they do a lot in this fight. And they say this line like, oh my god, right, Zoro has wounds so bad a normal person would be dead right now, let alone standing. And Yosako's like, or at least needs 6 months of bed rest. And they're saying this right next to the village doctor who's watching this fight and just looks at him and goes, what? What? Like, what do you mean he's that wounded in doing this? What the fuck didn't you, why didn't you say anything? I found that very funny. That the doctor actually has a personality, because most background characters in One Piece don't always get that. Um, but Zoro is in fact the man who is too stupid to die, thankfully. Um, which is great. There is a bit of dialogue later I'll talk about because Zoro has a good moment in this episode. We cut back to Usopp. Um, just as Zoro is tired of dealing with Hachi's shtick, Chu is getting real tired of Usopp's shtick. Which is great. And they're it's just Usopp running away and doing stupid shit. He thinks he got really far ahead of Chu, so he stops and like yells insults at him to try and encourage him. And then Chu's suddenly behind him, and then he starts running away again. And Chu's like, "Damn it, why didn't I hit him?" um, and again, it's one of the comedic primary characters dealing with a straight man primary character, and just Oda's really good at writing how exhausting that is for the straight man character. Um, we cut back. Hachi has gotten his 6 swords, and he's getting ready to fight Zoro. He comes at Zoro with this crazy octopus thing where he's just swinging his swords randomly. And we see Zoro Danzy Pants, as I wrote in my notes, where he yells for Johnny and Yosaku to throw him his swords, because Hachi has swords now. He's actually fighting Zoro as a swordsman. Zoro cannot lose, because Zoro just promised Luffy a day and a half ago, when he almost got cut in half, never to lose a sword fight again. So Yosaku and Johnny just fucking hurl their unprotected swords, which is wildly dangerous, kids.
I love how we completely forgot about the fact that Luffy is drowning underwater and that Nojiko and Gen are trying to free him from the stone
Oh,
and get him to breathe.
we covered that, but we haven't cut back to them yet, I don't think, at this point. Or if we did, it was so minor I haven't written it down that we cut back to them yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So Zoro catches their swords, does like a wolf technique, he calls it like the wolf something, and cuts Hachi across the chest. But again, Zoro's so weak he's not able to just kill Hachi with these cuts. And Zoro brings up the fact that his swords are heavier than Hachi's. Zoro means metaphorically. Hachi then says that his swords weigh 300 kilo. And I'm like, there's no way those 6 swords are fucking 300 kilo. Like again,
300 pounds. 300 pounds is way different to 300
okay.
kilo.
So the
God.
subtitles I read said kilo. All right, pounds.
No,
Still,
it says 300 pounds on here.
Okay. That might just be a translation
makes a lot
thing.
more sense. Because 300
No,
kilos
because
is
that's still 20 pounds a sword. I own swords. They're not 20 pounds. They're like a well-made sword. Like is maybe 7 pounds. His swords should weigh like total maybe 50 pounds.
Maybe fisherman's swords are heavier and different.
It's just Hachi's shtick, is what it amounts to. Because again, he's taking what Zoro is saying literally. Zoro like is like, my swords are heavier than yours because I have a reason to not lose. And Hachi's like, well, my swords are heavier. Clearly, I have 6 of them. They have to weigh more than your 3, or are your swords weighted somehow? Like, it's very much like a Mr. Bean or like a Rowan Atkinson kind of joke. It's a Blackadder kind of joke that I find very funny. And this is, I wrote down this line because there's just this moment where Hachi's being an idiot and Zoro is like, I'm gonna pass the fuck out. Like I'm dying. And there's this moment where he goes through this list of like things and he's like, if I would die from a wound, I need to not. If I receive a wound that would kill another man, I need to survive it. If I'm going to fight an enemy that would kill another man, I need to beat them. And he just goes through this list of things internally, and it ends with him just thinking, in order to beat a man like Mihawk, I can't just be ordinary. Because, like, that was, like, the running thing. Like, if this would kill an ordinary man, I have to be stronger than it. If this is the limit for an ordinary man, I need to surpass it. If I'm going to ever stand a chance of battling Mihawk, I can't just be ordinary. And this whole time, it's, like, flashing to Mihawk in his eyes, and, like, Zoro's literal fever dream. And I didn't remember this scene. Like, this was, like, new to me, because I probably never really paid this much attention to this fight, because, you know, I've seen it a few times, so you just don't pay attention anymore, right? But, again, because I'm taking notes and I'm paying very close attention, I was like, I don't remember this. I don't remember this dialogue. And my whole body was, like, covered in goosebumps. I'm like, yeah, that's right, baby. You can't just be ordinary. Fucking slay this octopus. Takoyaki for days. So I was just super into it. So again, we see this moment where Zoro and Sanji have a big, or Hachi and Zoro have a big clash. Zoro, ends up, like, cutting his fingers a whole bunch, and Hachi drops his swords and then picks them up again. During this whole thing, Sanji, at one point, I don't know why I didn't write this down in my notes. But Sanji ends up getting, distracted by Zoro collapsing earlier, before Hachi grabs his sword. And Kurobe uses this opportunity to kick or punch Sanji, like, all the way out into the middle of the field on the outside of the wall. But at this point, Sanji has come back in and is ready to fight Kurobe proper. Um, we cut back to Nami after a bunch of static, non-animated reactions to Zoro beating Hachi, which is great. And we see Nami, like, tying her arm up, and I swear I just wrote in my notes, Nami considers stabbing herself in the arm repeatedly might not have been a smart move. Like, because she's in a lot of pain, and she's, like, tying her arm off with her teeth. It just, the way they animated her face, it's just like, huh, her thought process is right now like, oh, that was cathartic, but man, am I paying for it. We cut back to the fight after Nami decides she's gonna run and help everyone. And we see that Zoro is too weak to help, really, right now. But he's trying to get into the water to go save Luffy because he won his fight already. So, but Sanji's like, you can't do that, you'll die, like, your wound will open and you'll die. It's not a matter of, like, the fishman will kill you, you will just die. And Zoro's like, well, I gotta do it, and you gotta fight. And Sanji's like, I know, you idiot. What I'm saying is stay there. You won't get mad if I do this. And we see Sanji's bare feet cut across our screen as he dives into the water to try and save Luffy. And we see him notice that Gen and Nojiko are helping Luffy. Now, earlier on, it did cut to them at some point, and we saw Gen using the sledgehammer to try and break Luffy free. But because of water, that doesn't really work. So they gave up on that, and now Nojiko has pulled Luffy's head out of the water because he's rubber, and Gen is trying to pump the water, like with CPR, out of Luffy's elongated neck. And Sanji's like, oh, Luffy is getting help, he's not gonna die, great, I can just fight the fishman. Then the fishman fucking clobbers him in the back at Mach speed. And that's the end of the episode.
Damn.
Yeah.
One more left. Ooh, it's like a race against the clock. Is my PC going to update first? Or are we going to get the podcast done first?
Well,
it's literally a race against time.
Let's go right into episode 40 then and continue the fight. Sanji gets the shit kicked out of him underwater a little bit. I wrote down a parody of a Little Mermaid song where I wrote, nothing is better, down where it's weather, take it from Sanji. Which is a parody of Everything's Better, down where it's wetter. Because I don't know, I was, just coughing up a lung while writing these notes. Kurobe's, like, mocking chivalry again, and he, like, beats Sanji super far back, but he notices that they're helping Sanji, or helping Luffy as well, so he's planning to go fucking kill Gen and Nojiko and Luffy. Sanji gets blasted all the way back to Arlong Park and starts going to swim up to get air because he needs to breathe. And Kurobi dashes in front of him and stops him. And then he says this stupid line about water pressure and humans not being able to handle rapidly changing water pressures, which is true. And then he talks about dragging Sanji down to the abyss. But One Piece seas are canonically very shallow. And in different cuts, like, the water here looks like it's less than 20 feet deep. Or about 20 feet deep at maximum. And the way they describe the pressure changing and the way they animate Sanji's like whole stomach like crunching in on itself and blood coming out of his mouth, it's like they're diving him down like 100 feet. It's really stupid. But again, it's one of those things where like Oda's just writing off the seat of his pants. So Kurobi dives Sanji down to the bottom of the water, and like we literally see his organs compress and blood shoot out of his mouth, but he's still got his hands over his mouth, preventing water from getting in. And then we see Sanji with his wild eye pointing up like he wants to go for another ride. And Kurobi's like, "Ah, you cheeky bitch. Alright, let's see if you can handle it twice." Kurobi shoots them both back up to the surface, and Sanji goes, "So, fishmen, clearly, must have two respiratory systems. One that uses lungs when they're above ground, and one that uses their gills when they're underwater. And if you shove air in a fish's gills, it fucking dies." So he pushes himself onto Kurobi and starts blowing all of the air left in his lungs in this weird romantic French kiss into the man's gills. And we just see Kurobi start to suffocate painfully. And he lets go of Sanji. And I just wrote down, Sanji really knows how to kill a fish. So Sanji gets out of the water, gets a few breaths, confirms to Zoro that Luffy is at least not going to die, so they don't need to worry about him right now, but they still need to save him later. He tells Kurobi to get out of the water so he can kick his ass. Kurobi gets out of the water, and then I wrote down, we get the first chance to see Sanji have a real opportunity to prepare a meal. And he just kicks the absolute shit out of this fish man, and it's beautifully animated, and it's great. Sanji fighting is absolutely beautiful because by making him only do kicks, it's just the animation is always good. Whenever I watch shonen battle anime, I am always drawn to characters who have really visceral, close quarter combat fighting styles because it always ends up getting animated the best. That's why Rock Lee is like one of my favorite Naruto characters. Watching martial artists fight using their bodies in animation is fucking amazing. And Sanji just beats the shit out of that fish. Like it's nothing. Like Kurobi doesn't get a hit in during the rest of the fight. And then Sanji ruins it by going, "I guess he doesn't want dessert," because he has to drop a stupid fucking one-liner. So at this point, we have Zoro, who is gravely wounded, Sanji, who is moderately wounded, and Arlong, who is fresh as a daisy and really pissed. So Arlong gets up because he's not just gonna let them go save Luffy. The game's still on. He's not down. So the two of them get ready to fight Arlong. In their current state, probably not going to go well. However, I am convinced at this point in the story, if full health Zoro and full health Sanji were to take on Arlong together, at this point in the story, they'd probably succeed. And they wouldn't need Luffy. But because they're both so fucked up, thankfully Luffy will be entering the fight fresh later. So we cut back to Usopp and find him lying down on the ground, a broken, bloody mess. However, we hear that from Chu, it only took one shot of his water blast to make Usopp like this. And he turns around and starts walking away. And we zoom in close on Usopp, and his hand starts to move. And we find out that Usopp made a ketchup star to make him fake his own death whenever he needs it. Which is, perfect Usopp. Now, I don't often cry in One Piece, but this episode caught me off guard and almost made me cry. So, there's this moment where Usopp has escaped death and injury Chu is walking away, and he's done it. He thinks he's distracted Chu long enough for the others to have taken care of it. He'll come back up as they're cleaning up the rest of the mess, act like a hero, and tell them, he tried his best. Oh, he was lucky to get out alive. Tell Nami like he tried his best. He gave everything he could, and he starts getting these flashbacks to Luffy, to Zoro, to Sanji, and it's interrupting his little practice speech. This is something Usopp does a lot. It's something with people with general anxiety do a lot, where they practice their conversations with people before they have them. And Usopp does this a lot over the story. It's something he's very consistent about. Um, and he's sort of stopping because he's realizing how much of a piece of shit he's being. And then he gets to Nami, and it pushes him past the point. And I'm tearing up again because I'm a fucking soft piece of shit, I guess, today. And there's just a moment where Usopp is literally packing dirt onto himself to make himself look more beat up, to lie to his friends, when all he can feel is fucking shame. And he just sits there crying. And Kaya pops in his head for a moment. And he's just telling himself how shameful he's being. How could I possibly face these friends of mine again, knowing I didn't risk it all like they're doing? And it's so good. It's such a good fucking bit of moment of Usopp just having that moment where, yeah, he's afraid. Of course he's afraid. He's just a fucking kid. These people kill people. Usopp's never killed anyone intentionally that I know of. And it's this great moment where he is very much the definition of brave, where he pushes aside through the shame and orders Chu to come back and fight him because he's not done with him yet. Which is stupid. He definitely should have opened with a surprise attack, but he's riding the adrenaline right now. I'll forgive Usopp his transgressions. But this was a great moment that really caught me off guard with how emotionally it made me feel. And again, I teared up a little bit just telling you about it right now. Um,
I'm watching the playback as well, so it's like,
so good.
ooh.
And again, Oda really hammers home that Usopp is bad at lying. Usopp could have totally just shown up later with these lies, and the crew probably would have believed him. Maybe not Nami or Zoro, and Sanji wouldn't have cared, but Luffy would have. For sure. But it's not about them believing him. It's about him abusing their trust in him. And again, Oda loves to talk about how Usopp is the liar of the group, but he never really lies. He makes up stories, but when it comes to actually lying to the crew, he can't do it. It's shameful. It would disgrace him to do it. He set out to be a brave warrior of the sea, and damn it, he'll die before he is a coward and lies to his friends about that. And it's so good. I'm trying not to cough through it. So Chu comes rushing back. Usopp shoots him, but that doesn't stop him. Usopp gets fucking clobbered by Chu right in the fucking head. And then there's a beautiful moment where Chu's like kicking him, and he's like, I'm done. And he's like, yeah, right, you're done, you little bitch. I'm gonna keep kicking you till you're dead. And then Usopp's like, I'm done, running away. He whips out his hammer and hits him right in the shins, and my whole body winces in pain. I'm dying. Chu winces back from getting hit by this fucking huge hammer, and Usopp jumps up and does the rubber band shtick again. And Chu, of course, because again he's a straight man caught off guard, closes his eyes and winces about it, like he's about to get hit in the eyes with a rubber band. Usopp uses this opportunity to run off into the forest. And we see Chew blush, because he's embarrassed, and his whole body goes pink, and I found that very funny. Um, he walks into a nearby rice field. He sucks up all the water, making his body this massive bloated thing. And he blasts down a part of the forest. And Usopp's just like standing out in the open, like, holy shit, that was strong. And Chew's like, ah, fuck, why am I having such a hard time beating this idiot? Look at him, he's just so stupid. Um, and then he starts shooting at Usopp, and Usopp's like, ah, how did he notice me? Even though he was
Like,
just standing out in the open. Um, and then this is a really good moment of Usopp thinking under pressure. He tosses a bottle of grog, of wine, some generic alcohol. It changes depending on what sub you're looking at. Which of course Chew catches because it's just a bottle. Usopp hits that with a lead star and shatters it all over. Chew rushes into the forest after him and pins him down and is getting ready to kill him. And he's like, "Are you ready to fucking end it now?" And Usopp's like, "Yep. Did you know alcohol is flammable?" And fucking sets him on fire. Because Usopp doesn't.
Oh, this is a funny part. I forgot about this.
Yeah,
Like,
no. Usopp does not take prisoners.
fire. When he sets him on fire, he just like Usopp hammer and he falls in the ocean. And
Oh,
then Chew
so
starts to get back up and then Usopp is panicking. He's like, Usopp hammer, Usopp hammer, Usopp hammer, Usopp hammer.
oh, you missed one. So this happens. Chew gets set on fire. He starts running back to the rice paddies to dive into the water. Usopp, realizing that's a bad idea, does a full body jump corkscrew hammer to his head, hits him all the way into the rice field, the water, puts out the fire. Chew starts to get up. Usopp starts hitting him with the hammer, just yelling, Usopp hammer, Usopp hammer, Usopp hammer. And then he goes, Usopp, rubber band. And you actually hear him shoot the rubber band. Because they use the shtick again. And then at the end, we see Chew's beaten, crying body. His head just welts. And Usopp, like, limp, collapsing backwards. He's like, I did it! Do you see that now? Even I can do it if I try. And I'm like, my baby boy. Yes, you can. So then we cut back to Arlong and the bunch, and we see people reacting to the fight. Both Sanji and Zoro are on the ground like they're getting beat the shit out of them. And we find out that Arlong is just splashing water at them. But oh god. Oh, that hurt.
Like, if you're not feeling well, like, I know it's gotten worse, like, this episode. I honestly, we're so close to the end now, I'm literally just gonna say if you are starting to cough a lot and feel really, really bad, just literally just read the bullet points as they are, don't elaborate on them whatsoever. And
Well, I
just,
mean,
like,
this is the last one. We're at the end of the episode.
I
And I feel much better after that cough, actually.
Okay.
So basically we see that Arlong is just throwing water at them, and because he is such a strong fishman, it's basically a shotgun blast. And Sanji and Zoro are getting the shit kicked out of them. And at this point, Nami shows up. He's like, "Oh, Nami! My favorite, what's up? Hey, I'm gonna kill these guys, and then we can talk. What are you doing here?" And she's like, "I'm here to kill you." And that's the end of the episode. I'm sorry for dealing with me dying today, everyone.
It's fine. I'm just worried for your health.
No, it's honestly just I have like a little bit of phlegm in the back of my throat that I haven't been able to get out. And the nearest clinic is like, I don't know, half a kilometer away, but it's like 40 degrees all day, and I just don't want to walk to it. I'm fine. I'm not sick or anything. It's just an annoying cough.
Just like take some cough medicine.
Yeah, I don't have any.
Oh, rip.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? It's I don't live with my parents or anything anymore, right? I'm not used. I don't have these like, oh, I'll just go to the medicine cabinet that my parents keep stocked. It's just like, all right, no, I'm an adult and need to do that myself, and therefore have not done that. It's just one of those situations. And I could go to the clinic and get something. It's just it's a hike and it's hot out, so I've just been suffering in silence. Well, in coughs, but I feel fine, and it's just a cough. I'll live. That was episode 40, though, and we will be back next time for the end
Episode
of the
41
Arlong
to
Park arc.
49.
Yep, I'm super excited. Almost into the Grand Line, baby. We're getting there.
It's like
All right. Well, we beat the ticking clock of Rudy's computer shutting down. So we're going to say goodbye before that happens. Goodbye, everyone.
goodbye.
Bye-bye.